Okay, we're rolling.
Hey, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. It's Dave with you. I hope you're doing well. We're going to be pulling out our maps today and going on a journey. So as a podcaster, when we create our episodes, we're building we're building a journey, we're building a destination. And the best way to get to your destination is to have GPS in your car or on your phone. In the old day, paper maps, to find the buried treasure, where the pirates hid all the treasure, right? Yeah, you need a map, and X marks the spot, all that good stuff. And in podcast episode creation, I think we would really benefit from having a show flow blueprint for our podcast as we create our episodes. This really could help, especially new podcasters or podcasters who need a little bit more structure to their podcast episodes, to keep you on task and get you to your destination in an efficient way. Now, this is something that I used when I first started podcasting. I've kind of abandoned it a little bit. I don't use it as much anymore with the amount of episodes that I do have. You find you start getting into your own routine, and the map becomes less and less important at some points for some people. But I think starting out, this is a great place to begin, is to actually have what I like to call that show flow blueprint. So we're going to get into that here today on the show. I'm glad you're here. Let's get out our maps and see where we end up. Thanks for being here. If you listen to radio people, they're going to talk about a show map. So basically the same kind of concept, but in radio, that's what they call it. It's a simple, repeatable plan that they use in radio for what happens next each minute on the air. So they plan it all out in advance. Some of the people you hear on the radio are not actually on the radio when you hear them. They recorded it in the past, kind of like podcasting. And they could even be like doing something else. They could be off the clock or on their way home from work from the radio station, and their voices are still being heard on the radio as if they're there. That's because they're recording in the past. And they have to have a plan, a map of all the different segments and things they have to do so that they have that freedom to not be on air all the time. For podcasters, we can adapt the idea of a show map in radio into a more flexible, creator-friendly planning tool. I think by giving it a name that makes sense for us outside of radio, I like Show Flow Blueprint for this. It's just very simple to understand. It's a show flow blueprint could easily be imagined or visualized as like a one-page guide that outlines the structure, timing, and purpose of each part of your episode. And I love the idea of thinking of a podcast in chunks. That's how I record. I record in chunks. So this is my second chunk right now that we're doing of this podcast episode. And when I'm done this chunk, I hit stop, and I read ahead to what I'm going to talk about next and go through my notes, organize my thoughts, and hit record. And record the third chunk of this episode. And I like throwing in those little swipe sounds. That signifies that we're moving forward in topic and into a new idea. So I do that on purpose. So you can steal my idea, you can ignore it, but that's how I show up for my podcast. And I have a show flow blueprint for every episode. Whether it's written down or just in my brain, I at least know I'm heading in the right direction. And I know I'm getting to my destination because we planned it out. And I think that's one of the biggest things, that we don't plan out all the time what we're going to do. We just flip on the mic and hope for the best. And that doesn't always lead to best quality content in a condensed period of time. It leans into rambling. It leads into off-topic rants and odd things that have nothing to do with our subject matter. And we feel like we need to fill the air, fill the dead space with mumbling and talking about whatever comes to our mind. I like the idea more of a show flow blueprint. That's my encouragement for you. If your mind's scattered and you need some direction, this could really, really help you. Spend less time winging it and more time being intentional with that show flow blueprint idea. So we're going to break it up into sections for you. And again, these are not set in stone. You can change these, adapt these, move them around however you want. But there's several key things to consider. 6 altogether, actually, as I count them out here, 6 different segments for every episode. And this can be a repeatable show flow blueprint for you to carry forward into your next episode. So try it and let me know how it goes. So first, we need to define our standard intro. This is called our opening frame. We need to define our intro, our hook. Who is the show for, and who you are as the host, and what this episode will do for the listener. Keep it a rough time target so that you start is tight and not rambly. So you do want to practice this. A good intro is going to help. I would suggest that a good intro on YouTube is different from a good YouTube on Apple, Spotify, and Audible. In an audio format, you have some leniency, you have some space. In video and in YouTube, you want to get to it as quick as possible. So you might want to rethink your intros for a video YouTube or audio YouTube version of your show. Could probably do with a different intro, and you might see better results. Something to play with. But we need a good opening frame. You need to open the show. Shows that just kind of start, and as a listener, you're thinking, "Oh, did I miss the intro? Did I skip ahead?" No, they just come on the mic talking, and it's just like you caught up with the middle of a conversation. And for a listener, that's very disengaging, right? You want people to be engaged, not disengaged when they come into your show. So have a clear starting point. The second one is break up your podcast into segment blocks. Break the episode into clear sections, like I just did. I just did that right there, with specific purposes: teaching segment, interview segment, story segment, a Q&A, a call to action, pathway to engagement is my preferred term for that. And note approximate duration and the transitions that you're going to use to get into and get out of each block that you do. So think of it in chunks. Your episode doesn't have to be all monologue. Your episode doesn't have to be all interview. Your episode can have a variety of different things that you do within each episode, leaning on different types of segments that people look forward to. So there's a lot of different things you can do. So you need to play with this and come up with what works best for your show and map it out. Map it out. Your show flow blueprint. Map this out. What are your segment blocks in your episode? It's much better to record in blocks than to try to record an entire 45-minute podcast episode with one take. It's too much pressure. Break it up into blocks. And then the other thing we need to think about too is, what are the recurring features in our podcast that we want to include? When you're creating your show, especially when you're first starting out, think about how you can build in something that's repeatable. Moments that your audience can recognize, like listener question of the week, or question of the month, or listener feedback section, or voice messages that come through your SpeakPipe, or coffee donations for your Buy Me a Coffee, or whatever it is. But have a repeatable, recurring feature that people look forward to. It becomes like an anchor, becomes a good transition point, and it becomes something, when it's repeated, it becomes something that people adopt and look forward to. And it also is a great engagement tool because people want to be part of it. So these function like radio benchmarks and make your planning easier if you do them on repeat. So have these recurring features and blend them into your show and place them strategically. I was talking to one podcaster and they said they had a story they did in their show, and it looked like in their listening analytics that people were going back to that story, even though it was like the middle of the episode, and listening to it more than once because there was a bump. It was like a little mountain peak where the story was in the podcast episode. I'm like, well, you might want to move that story to the beginning of the episode to hook people then. And it's like, oh, that works. I'll try that. So play with the placement of these recurring features too. And if you see it, you're getting some traction. Again, you're going to see that in Apple and Spotify backends. You're not going to see it on your podcast hosting site. They don't have that information for you. So you need to sign into your Apple Podcasts and your Spotify for Creators. Even if you're not hosted on Spotify, you can still claim your show and you can get into episode level data and see those spikes. And when you see a spike, that's your audience talking to you. So be aware of those things. Also, this kind of leads into the next part, is just hone in on the engagement moments. Intentionally place spots where you invite reviews, email replies, social DMs, or website visits, instead of tossing them in randomly at the end, throw them into your content, mix them in instead of just at the end. Again, remember, not everybody gets to the end of your episode. So putting all the good stuff at the end means only a select audience members are going to even hear or interact with that. So blend it into your content. Whenever it comes up in conversation, or when you're talking about something, you talk about a new resource that you're featuring in one of your segments, right? In one of your segment blocks, then maybe you talk about how people can get it through the link in your show notes or on your website or through your email newsletter. Sprinkle them through your episode. Don't just save it for the end. Keep your podcast engaging by giving more engagement moments throughout the show. And one of the things I find a lot of podcasters starting out struggle with is pacing and timing of their tangents. So whenever I have a tangent, I make fun of myself. And I've heard other podcasters do this, so I did my own version of it here on the show. But I make fun of it because for me, it's in the moment. It gives a little bit of my personality. It shows you that I'm not just a one gear type person with my voice. And I get to show you a little side of Dave that you might not get anywhere else. So here's, well, I'll do it right now, I guess. Might as well. Here's a little bit of Dave and how I handle my tangents. I call them out by doing this.
And now, it is time for Dave to share a most excellent rant on something that he just won't stop talking about. Please allow Dave to share his thoughts on this particular subject so that his glorious wife Jennifer may have a moment of rest from Dave going on and on about this topic. Here is Dave and his rant for this week.
So what's my rant? Okay, well, here's where I do my little rants. My rant would be podcasters who talk down to their audience like they're talking to a 5-year-old, like we're inept. We have no idea what we're doing. I get it. You're important. You're the podcaster, but talking to us like we don't know anything is also quite demeaning. So when you're talking to your audience, make sure that you don't talk down, don't punch down, build up, strengthen people, look for the good in people. Stop looking for the negative all the time. Creating podcasts and podcast ideas that only talk down to people is exhausting. You're wondering why nobody's hiring you is because you're being mean all the time and you're attacking people for no reason. They're trying their best. Always put people in a good light. People are trying. They might be struggling. They might ask the same question 30 times, but they're trying. So find something positive in people. And don't just focus on the negative. And don't create content that pushes people down. Create content that brings people up. And with that, my rant is over. Let's get back to what we're talking about. That's an inserted rant. There you go. So we go back to what we're talking about. Pacing and time targets. Set a target total length in a rough time window per block when you're doing your show. You're not scripting every second of your podcast, but you're just giving yourself some rails, some guardrails to help you avoid dragging segments or rushing important parts. Have some targeting over your pacing so that you know exactly what you're doing and when. And then the last part of all this is just your closing frame and how you end your show. Decide on a consistent way that you land the episode recap in 1 or 2 sentences. Next step, actions for the listener. If you have an interview, do you come back, just you and the listener, and recap what happened in the interview? I like those. Do you have a call out to next episode coming up next so people know what's coming ahead? You have to be super organized to do that. Do you have at the beginning of the episode, just a little bonus, do you have a callback to last week's episode, the last episode people would have heard before this one? That's another thing you can consider too, is send them back into your catalog, and at the end of your show, send them forward into your episode, what's coming up next. So all this takes planning, and that's why you need a show flow blueprint so that you know what's happening next, and you map it all out. Figure out a consistent way to end your show and do it. So right now, for the How to Podcast series, or behind the scenes, I do this. I end the show. I'm going to do a recap here in a second. And then I'm going to lead into my outro, which is usually over a music bed. And it's I move the outros around, or the kind of the call to action piece at the end. I have several pre-recorded ones, and I just pick them depending on what we're doing. So it could be buy me a coffee. Right now it's going to be about the marathon happening in February for the How to Podcast series. We're going to do 24 episodes in 24 hours overnight. I'm going to be recording all night, and that's going to be very interesting. So I'm promoting that right now. So I know what my outro is, and then there's a bonus after the outro and the show is officially done. If you've been around here from episode 500 going forward for the last 70 episodes, I've been doing something bonus at the end of the show. And you have to stick around if you want to hear what that is. So I know my endings. I know where I'm done. I know when I'm finished. And make sure you have that mapped out through your show flow blueprint. You can keep your show flow blueprint in a simple template, like episode title at the top, then each block listed as with a goal, key points, and approximate times. And you can use it before recording to plan, during recording as a guide, and after recording to check to see if you hit what really matters in the episode. The key takeaway in all of this is just, instead of starting each episode from scratch, like a blank piece of paper, right? Use a show flow blueprint to give your podcast a repeatable structure that makes planning faster, delivery smoother, and every minute more purposeful for the listener, because you actually have a plan. When you don't have a plan, it's hard to reach your destination. So plan out, just like a map. This is where I am, and this is where I want to be. And one of the key things when you get lost and you call your friend and you can't find their house, and you call them up, you're like, I don't know where, I can't find your house, man. One of the questions they're going to ask you is, well, where are you? Because I can't help get you to where I am until I know where you are. So you have to give them a point of reference. So I'm at the Walmart at such and such street. Oh, okay. Well, you're just around the corner. If you go this way, turn right, turn left, turn right, there's the house. Right. So you need a point of reference. And a point of reference could be for you, your show flow blueprint, to help you get to your destination. So don't just randomly drive around town and hope you get to where you want to go. Have a plan, think about it, and work your way towards the plan. It's a great way to reverse engineer success. When you start with the end in mind, you can go back through the process and make sure everything that you're doing leads to that result. So a show flow blueprint for your podcast. Have you tried one? If you ever want to talk through this and map out one specific for your show, you and I can do this together on the howtopodcast.ca website. My calendar link is always there for free. It's not gate-kept. You can have access to me as often and whenever you want. So as long as the dates are available in that calendar link, I'm ready to go. So reach out anytime and we can talk through your show and your show flow blueprint. I'd love to help you create your own. Instead of me giving you one, let's just build one for you. howtopodcast.ca. Thanks for being here. Take care. Hey, thanks for being part of the podcast today. Just a reminder, on February 13th to February 14th, we're going to do something a little different on the How to Podcast series. We're going to go and do 24 episodes in 24 hours, a marathon, self-imposed. We're going to create an episode every hour on the hour and release it over a 24-hour period. We're going to go live. We're going to do some live streaming. We're going to be live on social media. We're going to be live on LinkedIn and YouTube and a bunch of different things. So if you want to come along for the journey, and I know I have a global audience, so this might really work well for you to come and be a part of it. And when you go to bed on the 13th and wake up on the 14th by around 10 a.m., 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, you will have 24 episodes in 24 hours from the How to Podcast series. Why am I doing this? Because I don't hear anybody else doing this, and I'm up for a challenge. So it's leading into Valentine's Day. It's leading into falling in love with your podcast for the month of February, all that stuff. So if you're interested and you want to see what's going to happen, 24 episodes in 24 hours with your buddy here, Dave, let's see anybody else kind of do this. I challenge you or anyone else who thinks they can do this to take up the gauntlet and let's see if you can do 24 episodes in 24 hours. I triple dog dare you. I'm going to do it. And it's all part of our 365 days of content in 2026. So yeah, this should be fun. So if you want to stick around, you want to check it out. February 13th, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern, all the way through until completing at 11 a.m. Eastern on Saturday, the 14th, leading right into our meetup. We'd love to have you come along. Come check out the craziness, February 13th and 14th. Love to see you there. Cheers. So a question here at the end. Thank you for sticking around. This is the super bonus part for only you, because most people are gone. I'm doing this on purpose now that I'm up into my 500 episodes. So 570, 70 episodes of this. And again, the questions keep coming. So I spend a lot of time with new podcasters, coaching, and helping people start their show and grow their show. And one of the things I get from people is, Dave, when I start getting feedback, because we all want feedback, I want feedback for this show. When we start getting feedback, how do you track it? What do you do with this information? Well, there's two parts. First part, I keep a happy folder in my email thing. I use Gmail. I just create a folder and call it happy file. So anytime something good comes in, comments, praise for the show, just people being kind, a good result, somebody else found success because of this show and now they're doing the thing, whatever, I put it in my happy folder. And if there's ever a day where I feel a little less inspired to hit the mic, I go there first and I start reading through past comments that caught my attention from my listeners. And that resets, it's a huge reset button, and helps me get into the mood and back into the mic so I can record the next episode. There's going to be days where you just don't feel it. So give yourself an advantage and keep track. Don't try to remember the email from so-and-so that came in 3 years ago. No, put it in the happy folder. And that way you always have a point of reference to go to. The other part is when you get feedback. It could be good, it could be constructive, it could be mean, but feedback. And that feedback is something that you could really lean into to help your show be better. Sometimes feedback is going to distract you from the purpose of your show, and that's not helpful feedback, but it is feedback. So what I would encourage you to do is maybe have a Google Sheet if you're on Google and do all that. It's free to use Google Sheets, but create a Google Sheet and put in the feedback in one cell, and then next to it take out the key words from that. So it could be about sound quality or content or style or whatever. Like pick out some of the key things from that feedback from that person and keep track and see if you're seeing trends. You get people saying that your show lacks depth in content. Like you don't really go deep, you just kind of surface level. And like 5 people tell you that. That's interesting. You should be focusing on that. You need to go deeper in your content. If you're getting constant people telling you your podcast is too short, we want more of you. And you're doing a 5-minute podcast, you might want to, do 10-minute podcast, double it. I don't know. That's feedback from your audience. Some people are going to tell you your show's too long, show's too boring. We don't like the music at the beginning of your episodes. There's huge gaps of nothing at the 20-minute mark every episode. That's something you can act on. So if you don't keep track of it, you don't have a way to make changes. So use a spreadsheet, like a Google Sheet, for example, and bring those comments in and have a way for you to filter them, have a date as well for this feedback. And if you have contact information for the person, great. And thank them. When somebody reaches out to you, it's a big, big thing for anybody to act. So don't ignore the feedback, and don't ask for feedback if you have no plans to use it. Don't ask for anything from anybody if you're just going to ignore the results. You're wasting their time. You're wasting your own time if you're never going to use this or you never reference it. So right now, howtopodcast.ca, and in the show notes, you're going to see a link to my audience survey. It's there. It lives online. It's a link. There's some pretty specific questions about the show, and I'd love to hear your thoughts because I'm going to act on the things that you put in there. It's interesting to hear your comments, and I'd love to hear from you. So links in the show notes. and also on the website. You'll see a big button that says survey. Love to hear from you. And then act on the feedback you get from your audience. Have any questions? Let me know. Thanks for being here. Take care.